This was our RC 2014 Classic 2 at the end of the last video, with the CPU and ROM modules in place. Today we're going to add the RAM module. This will add 32 kilobytes of memory to the system. The RAM module needs only 3 sockets and chips, and 3 capacitors, so it can be assembled fairly quickly. Firstly, we get the RAM circuit board and identify the capacitors needed. As these are the lowest profile components, we will fit these first. All you will need for this assembly are a pair of wire snips, your soldering iron, and some means of holding the circuit board in place. As always, preparation is everything. Identify all the components you need prior to assembly. Prepare an uncluttered workspace with good lighting, and above all, take your time with the assembly. After soldering the capacitors in place, I check with a magnifying aid that all the solder joints look good, with no blobs of solder where they shouldn't be. Taking a little bit of time now to check this will save time trying to debug why the completed computer isn't working properly. Now that the capacitors are in place, it's time to fit the 3 sockets. These should fit perfectly on the circuit board. Take the time to check the orientation of the socket, matching the notch at one end with the marking on the circuit board. Placing the circuit board on a flat surface will allow you to solder the corner pins of each chip, holding them in place. As always, check the solder joints on the sockets, and that the sockets are still level with the board. The circuit board can then be returned to the frame to solder the remaining pins on the sockets. For those of you that haven't assembled chips on circuit boards before, sockets are normally used to avoid having to solder chips directly to the circuit board, as applying heat for too long can damage some chips. It also makes it easier to replace a chip later. Again, examine your circuit board with a magnifying aid to ensure that you haven't either missed soldering a pin or that you have inadvertently soldered 2 pins together. Now we can complete the last bit of soldering on this module, the edge connector. As it's important that this connector is soldered in correctly to allow the completed module to sit vertically when plugged into the backplane, take your time aligning it before soldering. Again as before, solder a couple of pins on the connector in place before you place it into the frame. Here the remaining pins can be soldered quite easily. As this edge connector carries all the signals passed between this module and the rest of the computer, it's important not to either miss soldering a pin or solder 2 together. And, as always, check with a magnifying aid that everything looks good. Correcting problems at this point is always much easier than correcting them later. Now that all the soldering has been completed, it's time to fit the 3 chips into their sockets. Check the documentation and the marking on the circuit board to ensure you get the correct chips. As with all chips, they are delivered with the legs slightly splayed out, and these need to be gently bent into a vertical position to allow them to be inserted easily into the sockets. This can best be done placing them on a flat surface and very gently bending all the pins on one side at a time. Be careful not to bend the pins too far. Once you are happy that the pins are aligned with the socket, you can then firmly insert the chip into its socket, taking care to align the notch on the chip with that of the socket. You can then proceed with the remaining 2 chips on this RAM module, taking care to place the correct chip in the correct socket. This completes the assembly of the RAM module, and after a final visual inspection, the board is ready to be slotted into the backplane. The Z80 processor can directly access only 64 kilobytes of memory, as they only had a 16-bit address bus. As we have added a 64 kilobyte ROM and 32 kilobytes of RAM, this exceeds that limit. This is handled by a process known as memory paging, where banks of the ROM are switched in and out as needed to give access to the area of the ROM required. So while the RC 2014 Classic II has only 32 kilobytes of memory on this RAM module, there are options for increasing this by swapping this RAM module for a different one. There is even a non-volatile 32 kilobyte RAM module available that I'm going to look at after this project has been completed. The next module to be added to the system is the Serial I/O module. But that's it for today. Thank you for watching.